They tried to bury my son without me being there. So I showed up with the police and the real truth. I raised a king, then watched them poison his crown. If you're watching this, understand one thing. A mother's love don't end at the grave. Subscribe and drop where you're watching from in the comments. You'll want to see how this ends. I felt it the moment she walked into my house. Some folks call it mother's intuition, but in my 62 years on this earth, I've learned to trust that chill that runs down my spine when something ain't right. Mama, this is Vanessa, the woman I've been telling you about. My son Marcus stood tall beside her, pride shining in his eyes. I extended my hand, my nurse's smile firmly in place. Welcome to our home, Vanessa. She took my hand, her grip cool and controlled, her smile perfect, too perfect. I've heard so much about you, Mrs. Washington. That's when I noticed it, the disconnect between her smile and her eyes. Her mouth said, pleased to meet you, while those eyes were taking inventory of everything I owned. Marcus tells me you're a curator at the Henderson Gallery? I served her sweet potato pie, watching how she picked at it with her fork. Senior curator now. She smiled at my son. Actually, I just acquired several new pieces that would complement your recording space beautifully. Darling. I listened as she talked about artists I'd never heard of, watched how she'd subtly touch Marcus's arm to redirect him whenever he mentioned his childhood in Harlem. Remember that time we couldn't afford that music camp, and Mr. Jenkins from the barbershop took up a collection? Marcus laughed, eyes bright with memory. Vanessa's smile tightened. Anyway, as I was saying about the Bergman exhibition, after dinner, I pulled my daughters aside in the kitchen. Tanya was arranging dessert plates while Michelle loaded the dishwasher. Something's not right with that woman, I whispered. Michelle rolled her eyes. Here we go. Mama's spider sense is tingling. She's accomplished and beautiful, Tanya said. And Marcus is happier than I've seen him in years. That's not happiness, I insisted. That's infatuation. There's a difference. You said the same thing about Michelle's husband. And they're celebrating 5 years next month, Tanya reminded me. And you were wrong about my editor position too, Michelle added. You swore they were just using me as the token black girl until I got that promotion. I pressed my lips together. This is different. It's always different. Mama, Tanya squeezed my shoulder. You've been overprotective since Daddy died. Not everyone is out to hurt us. From the living room, I heard Vanessa's laughter, practiced, perfect, followed by my son's deeper chuckle. I'd heard that laugh at his Carnegie Hall debut, at his graduation from Juilliard, at Sunday dinners when his sisters teased him mercilessly. But this laugh was different, like he was performing for her. Later that night, as they were leaving, I hugged my son tight. You're still coming for Sunday dinner next week, right? Before Marcus could answer, Vanessa touched his arm. Actually, we have a gallery event. Perhaps the following weekend? I watched them walk to her sleek foreign car, her hand possessively on his back. As they drove away, I stood on my porch, that familiar chill returning. Something was very wrong, and nobody was listening to me. Not yet, but they would. I'd spent 15 years as an emergency room nurse. I knew how to spot trouble before it flatlined on my table. And Vanessa Taylor? She was cardiac arrest waiting to happen. 8 months passed like a fever dream. Each time I saw my son, he seemed further away, like watching someone drowning just beyond my reach. Where's Marcus? I asked when Tanya arrived alone for our monthly family dinner. She avoided my eyes. He and Vanessa are looking at wedding venues. The wooden spoon in my hand clattered against the pot. Wedding venues? He wanted to tell you himself, but Tanya busied herself with the table settings. But his fiancée had other plans, I finished. 2 days later, Marcus finally called. Mama, I wanted you to hear it from me. I asked Vanessa to marry me. I gripped the phone tighter. When do I get to see the ring on her finger? Actually, we're having a small dinner tomorrow. Can you come? The dinner wasn't small. It was at Vanessa's gallery with champagne flowing and people I'd never met congratulating my son. I stood in my best church dress feeling like a stranger. Mrs. Washington, Vanessa air-kissed my cheek. I'm so glad you could make it. I nodded, watching how she worked the room, always keeping Marcus within arm's reach. When I finally got my son alone near the bathroom hallway, I took his hands in mine. Baby, are you sure about this? It's all happening so fast. His expression hardened. I'm 42, Mama. It's hardly rushed. I just want to make sure she loves you for you, not what? His voice sharpened. His voice. Not my position with the Philharmonic? Not my reviews in the Times? You think I don't know the difference? Marcus, you just can't stand seeing me with anyone, can you? The words struck like slaps. No one's ever good enough for your only son. I stepped back, shocked by the venom from my gentle boy. You don't mean that. Just be happy for me, Mama. For once, just be happy. He walked away, back to Vanessa's waiting arm. As I watched her whisper something in his ear, his eyes found mine across the room. Cold, distant eyes I didn't recognize. At the wedding 3 months later, I sat in the back row while Vanessa's mother took what should have been my place. Michelle squeezed my hand as we watched them exchange vows. It'll get better, Mama, she whispered. But it didn't. Holidays came and went with last-minute cancellations. When they did visit, Vanessa would mention how busy they were, checking her watch ostentatiously. Then one ordinary Tuesday night, my phone rang at 2:17 a.m. Mrs. Washington, this is Rachel, your son's neighbor. You need to come to Mount Sinai Hospital right away. Her voice trembled. It's Marcus. I don't remember the cab ride. I don't remember running through the emergency room doors, the same doors I'd walked through for 15 years as a nurse. I only remember the doctor's face, the same face I'd worn too many times. We did everything we could, he said. Behind him, nurses were removing tubes and monitors from my son's body. My beautiful boy lay still, his musician's hands curled slightly, as if still reaching for his cello. What happened? I managed to ask. Sudden cardiac arrest. It was quick, Mrs. Washington. He wouldn't have suffered. But I was suffering. God, how I was suffering. Where's his wife? Someone asked. And that's when I realized Vanessa wasn't even there. I've made all the arrangements. Vanessa's voice cut through the fog of my grief. She stood in the hospital corridor, not a hair out of place, dressed in an immaculate black suit. I'd been sitting in the same plastic chair for hours, waiting for her to appear. My daughters had caught the first flights out but wouldn't arrive until morning. Arrangements? My voice sounded strange to my own ears. For the funeral, tomorrow at 3. I blinked, trying to process her words. Tomorrow? That's not possible. His sisters aren't even here yet. Vanessa checked her phone. I have a short window with the funeral home. Marcus and I discussed this. He wanted something small and private. When did you discuss funeral plans? He was 44 years old. Her eyes flicked up, cold as river stones. We were responsible adults who planned for contingencies, Mrs. Washington. The service will be at Riverside Memorial Chapel at 3. I stood up, my nurse's training finally kicking through the shock. I need to see him again. They've already transferred him to the funeral home. She slipped her phone into her purse. I signed the release an hour ago. Without me? I'm his mother. And I'm his wife. The emphasis sliced like a scalpel. Legally, these decisions are mine to make. I felt my hand rise, ready to strike her smug face, but caught myself. Violence wouldn't bring my son back. Strategy would. 15 years in the ER had taught me to stay calm in crisis. Of course, I said, lowering my hand. You're right. I'll be at Riverside at 3. She nodded, seemingly satisfied, and walked away on her expensive heels. I immediately went to the nurses' station. Janice, an old colleague, hugged me tight. Evelyn, I'm so sorry about Marcus. He was such a good man. Janice, I need to know what happened. Everything. She glanced around, then lowered her voice. It was strange, Ev. His wife called 911, said he collapsed during dinner. But when paramedics arrived, he was already cool to the touch. Rigor was setting in. What are you saying? The timeline doesn't add up. And there's more. She hesitated. Your son came in last week, had a private conversation with Dr. Lewis in toxicology. I only know because I saw him in the hallway. My mind raced. I need to talk to Dr. Lewis. He's not on until tomorrow. She squeezed my hand. Evelyn, be careful. Your daughter-in-law has connections. Her uncle sits on the hospital board. The next morning, I arrived at Riverside Memorial at 2:30, dressed in black, my daughters flanking me like sentinels. The building was quiet. Too quiet for a funeral. May I help you? The receptionist looked confused. We're here for Marcus Washington's service. She checked her computer. I'm sorry. That service was moved. It's now at 1 at our East Side location. I felt my knees buckle. Tanya caught my arm. That's impossible, Michelle said. We weren't notified of any change. The receptionist looked uncomfortable. The widow requested the change this morning. The service is actually happening now. Too late. We were too late. My son was being buried, and I wasn't there to say goodbye. I'm sorry, ma'am. Your name is not on the approved list. The security guard blocked our path to the cemetery gates. where a small group of people stood around a gleaming mahogany casket. "I'm his mother," I said, my voice breaking. "Those are his sisters." The guard consulted his clipboard. "I only have instructions to admit those on Mrs. Washington's list." Through the wrought iron fence, I could see Vanessa, head bowed beneath a black veil, accepting condolences. Musicians from the Philharmonic stood in a semicircle, their instrument cases at their feet. None of Marcus's childhood friends were there. None of our family. "This is outrageous," Michelle said, already pulling out her press credentials. "I'm calling my editor right now." Tanya grabbed her arm. "That won't help, Chell. We need a different approach." A woman approached from inside the cemetery. "Mrs. Washington? Evelyn Washington?" I nodded, tears streaming down my face. "I'm Sophia Reeves. I played with Marcus at Juilliard." She glanced nervously at the guard, then lowered her voice. "Something's very wrong. Marcus called me 2 weeks ago, asking for help investigating Vanessa's background. He seemed scared." My heart pounded. "Did he say why?" "He thought she might be—" Sophia stopped as another security guard approached. "Not here. Meet me at the Starbucks on 86th in an hour." She slipped away as the second guard arrived. "You need to leave the premises immediately, or we'll call the police." "Go ahead," I said, my grief hardening into something else. "Call them." An hour later, huddled around a small table, Sophia's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. "Marcus sent me these text messages," she said, showing us a series of exchanges. "He suspected Vanessa was tampering with his medication, said he'd been feeling increasingly weak, having heart palpitations." "Why didn't he tell us?" Tanya asked. "He was gathering evidence first. He didn't want to alarm you without proof." Sophia looked at me. "But he was planning to talk to you, Mrs. Washington. He said if anyone would believe him, it would be his mama." My phone rang, an unknown number. When I answered, a man introduced himself as Marcus's attorney. "Mrs. Washington, I'm handling the execution of your son's will. I understand you were unable to attend the funeral." "She prevented us from attending," I said. A pause. "I see. Well, I'm calling because there's another matter. The co-op apartment where you reside, it appears it was in your son's name." "Yes, he bought it for me after his first major recording contract. Mrs. Taylor Washington has requested immediate vacant possession. As the sole beneficiary of your son's estate, she's within her legal rights." The coffee shop tilted around me. "She's evicting me from my home?" "I'm afraid so. You have 30 days. After hanging up, I sat in stunned silence. "She can't do this," Michelle said fiercely. "Legally she can," Tanya replied, the lawyer in her already calculating. Unless what?" I asked. "Unless Marcus's death wasn't natural causes." Tanya's eyes met mine. "Mom, do you think Vanessa could have killed my son?" The words tasted like ash. 2 days ago, I would have said no. But now, Sophia looked around nervously. Marcus was keeping records, hair samples, daily symptoms. He hid them somewhere safe. That night, as I lay in bed, the bed I might soon lose, my doorbell rang. Dr. James Lewis stood on my threshold, his face grave. "I should have contacted Marcus's primary physician when he came to see me," he said, without preamble. "But patient confidentiality." And then he made me promise. Promise what? Not to tell anyone he suspected he was being poisoned. Dr. Lewis stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Not until he had proof. The building where Marcus and Vanessa lived rose 40 stories above Central Park. All glass and privilege. I stood across the street, watching the doormen in their crisp uniforms, feeling like an intruder despite having visited dozens of times while my son was alive. "Mrs. Washington." Mr. Jenkins, the night doorman, spotted me and waved. Marcus had always treated the building staff with respect, remembering birthdays and playing Christmas carols in the lobby during the holidays. I crossed the street. "Evening, Mr. Jenkins. How are you holding up?" His face fell. "I still can't believe Mr. Washington is gone. Such a fine gentleman." I lowered my voice. "I need to get into my son's apartment." Jenkins looked nervous. "Mrs. Taylor Washington gave strict instructions. No one is allowed up without her approval." "I understand, but my son—" My voice caught. He might have left something important, something that could explain what happened to him. Jenkins glanced at the security cameras, then leaned closer. "There was something strange that night, Mrs. Washington. I wasn't supposed to be working, was covering for Rodriguez, but I heard them arguing, loud voices from their apartment. Then she left, carrying an overnight bag. When she came back hours later, that's when she called the ambulance." My heart raced. "Jenkins, Did my son leave anything with you? Anything at all? He hesitated, then reached into his pocket. About a month ago, he gave me this key. Said if anything happened to him, I should give it to you. Only you. The key felt heavy in my palm. Thank you. I'm retiring next month, he said, glancing at the cameras again. What's the worst they can do? Fire me? He checked his watch. She's at some gallery event until 11. Service elevator code is 3479, 15th floor. Inside the apartment, everything looked untouched. A museum to my son's life. His cello case stood in the corner of the living room. Sheet music lay open on a stand. In the kitchen, 2 wine glasses sat in the dish drainer. I moved quickly to his study. If Marcus had evidence, where would he hide it? Behind his desk hung a framed photo of us at his first Carnegie Hall performance. Something made me lift the frame. Behind it was a small wall safe. I couldn't open it, but I took photos with my phone. Then I searched his desk, finding a small notebook tucked between music books. The last entries made my blood run cold. VT, formerly SR in Chicago. Life insurance policy changed. Suspicious. Dr. Lewis, toxicology results Monday. I was photographing the pages when I heard the front door open. Slipping the notebook into my purse, I moved silently toward the service door as Vanessa's voice carried from the foyer. Just put the paintings in the study for now. I froze, trapped, as footsteps approached. The service door was across the open space. I'd be seen immediately. Actually, Vanessa's voice changed direction. Let's preview them in the living room first. I slipped into a closet, heart hammering as shadows passed beneath the door. When the voices moved to the living room, I crept out and finally reached the service exit. That night, I emptied my purse to find the notebook missing. In its place was a small note. Stop looking, or lose more than a notebook. My front door had been locked when I returned home, but someone had been inside. They knew what I was doing. They were watching me, and now they knew I was watching back. The results were conclusive. Dr. Lewis spread the lab reports across my kitchen table. Elevated levels of cardiac glycosides consistent with digitalis poisoning. Tanya stared at the papers. Digitalis? Like from foxglove plants? Exactly, Lewis nodded. In controlled doses, it's actually used to treat heart conditions, but in higher amounts, it causes arrhythmia, eventually leading to cardiac arrest. Michelle looked up from her laptop. And this is what killed our brother? These are just his hair samples from the weeks before his death, Lewis clarified. Without toxicology from the autopsy, I can't definitively say what caused his cardiac arrest, but these levels would certainly have weakened his heart over time. I clutched my coffee mug. Marcus knew. He suspected, Lewis corrected. He told me he'd started noticing his tea tasted different. That's when he began saving samples and documenting his symptoms. What symptoms? I asked. Increasing fatigue, occasional vision disturbances, heart palpitations, all consistent with chronic digitalis poisoning. Lewis hesitated. He also mentioned feeling confused sometimes, having trouble remembering things, which made him doubt his own suspicions. Classic gaslighting, Michelle murmured. Make the victim question their own reality. Tanya was examining the papers with her lawyer's precision. Where are the actual samples? We'll need them for evidence. Marcus said he was keeping everything in a secure location. Lewis shook his head. He didn't tell me where. What about the police? I asked. Can we take this to them? Tanya looked grim. Not yet. Without the body or the original samples, this is all circumstantial. We need more. I might have something, Michelle said, turning her laptop toward us. I used my press contacts to run a background check on Vanessa Taylor. The screen showed a news article from Chicago, dated 5 years earlier. A woman who looked remarkably like Vanessa, but with darker hair, stood beside an older man at a charity gala. Sandra Reynolds, Michelle read, with husband Edward Reynolds, philanthropist and art collector. That could be anyone, Tanya argued. Edward Reynolds died of heart failure 8 months after this photo was taken, Michelle continued. Left everything to his new bride. And before that, she pulled up another article. Victoria Thomas, married to investment banker William Thomas in Boston, also died of heart failure 11 months after their wedding. My hands trembled. She's done this before. 3 times that I can find, Michelle confirmed. Different names, different cities, same pattern. We need to get into that safe in Marcus's apartment, I said. And we need his body exhumed, Lewis added. If there was a fatal dose administered the night he died, it should still be detectable. Tanya stood up, already reaching for her phone. I'll contact the district attorney's office. For an exhumation order, we'll need compelling evidence of foul play. Meanwhile, Michelle said, we need to find out where Marcus kept those samples and the rest of his evidence. I closed my eyes, thinking of my methodical son. Where would he hide something so important? Not in his apartment, where Vanessa could find it. Not with a friend who might open it out of curiosity. A bank, I said suddenly. Marcus would use a bank vault. But which one? Tanya asked. And how do we access it without being his legal beneficiaries? I remembered something. A small key I'd found in Marcus's desk years ago when helping him move. I need to check something at home. In my jewelry box, beneath my wedding ring, lay a small envelope. Inside was an old-fashioned key and a card with an account number for Metropolitan Savings Bank. Marcus opened this joint account with me 10 years ago, I explained when I returned. For family emergencies, he said. I'd forgotten all about it. Lewis looked at his watch. The bank closes in an hour. Then we better hurry, I said, already reaching for my coat, because I'm betting that's exactly where my son hid the evidence that will bring his killer to justice. The safe deposit box held more than we could have imagined. Not just hair and tea samples labeled with dates, but a detailed journal, photographs of Vanessa with different names and men, and most damning of all, a new will, legally executed 3 weeks before his death, leaving everything to me and his sisters. This is why she rushed the funeral, Tanya whispered. She knew this existed. And now, I said, touching my son's handwriting one last time before we locked everything away safely, so do we. Mrs. Washington, we have a problem. Detective Michael Carter's voice was tight over the phone. The judge denied our request for exhumation. My heart sank. How is that possible? We have evidence of poisoning? A falsified will? Vanessa's lawyers argued that disturbing the deceased would violate religious principles. They submitted an affidavit claiming Marcus had converted to her family's faith, which prohibits exhumation. That's a lie! My son was Baptist his whole life. I believe you, Carter sighed. But the judge granted a temporary stay while religious experts review the claim. Meanwhile, she's liquidating his assets fast. His Stradivarius is already listed with an auction house. I closed my eyes, trying to steady myself. Carter had been helping us for weeks, ever since I'd approached him with our evidence. As a detective in major crimes, he had resources we desperately needed. There's something else, he continued. The toxicologist found traces of a compound in one of Marcus's tea samples that wouldn't show up on standard tox screens. It's a plant-based substance used in certain South American tribal rituals, causes confusion, memory issues. She was drugging him to make him doubt himself, I whispered. Exactly. Look, the system is moving too slowly. We need to be more creative. Later that evening, my daughters and I met with Carter and Sophia at a small cafe far from our usual neighborhoods. The memorial concert is our opportunity, Carter said, spreading out printouts of the event program. Vanessa is hosting it at Lincoln Center next week, all proceeds going to a music education foundation she's establishing in Marcus's name. Foundation my ass, Michelle muttered. It's just another way to control his money. But it gives us access, Carter continued. Sophia's performing, so she'll be backstage. Tanya can attend as a donor representative, and Mrs. Washington, I won't be invited, I finished bitterly. Actually, you will be. Sophia slid an envelope across the table. I made sure your invitation got misplaced by the coordinator. She's sending a new one with a personal apology from Vanessa. I raised an eyebrow. Vanessa apologizing? She won't know until it's too late, Sophia explained. The coordinator owes me a favor, and Vanessa is too busy selecting which of Marcus's pieces she wants sold after the concert to notice the guest list. Tanya leaned forward. What exactly are we doing at this concert? Carter looked around before answering. We're setting a trap. Vanessa's careful, but she's also arrogant. If she thinks she's won, she might get careless. What kind of trap? I asked. The kind where she confesses, Carter replied. Mrs. Washington, how do you feel about wearing a wire? For the next week we prepared. Carter coached me on how to elicit information without seeming suspicious. Tanya prepared legal documents for immediate filing if we succeeded. Michelle made discreet inquiries about Vanessa's previous victims, building a pattern of evidence. The night before the concert, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my window, looking out at the Harlem streetlights, remembering how Marcus used to practice by this window as a boy. his cello between his knees, brow furrowed in concentration. "I'm going to get her, baby," I whispered to his memory. "I promise you that." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Change of plans. Meet at the concert hall at 4 p.m. instead of 6. Important evidence discovered. Carter." Something felt off. Carter never texted from unknown numbers. I dialed his regular cell. "Detective Carter." "Michael, did you just text me about meeting early tomorrow?" A pause. "No, ma'am, I didn't." My blood ran cold. "Someone did, using your name. Where's your phone now?" His voice sharpened. "In my hand. Turn it off immediately. Remove the battery if you can. Don't turn it back on." His words came rapidly. "They're tracking you, Mrs. Washington, and they know what we're planning." I disconnected and powered down my phone, heart racing. From my window, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street that hadn't been there earlier. Someone was watching my apartment. The trap had been set, all right, but not by us. Lincoln Center gleamed in the afternoon sun, its plaza filled with people in evening wear arriving for Marcus's memorial concert. I straightened my black dress, patting the small recording device hidden in my pearl necklace, not the one Carter had given me, which might be compromised, but a backup Tanya had obtained through a former client. "Remember," Carter murmured beside me as we approached the entrance, "we're just gathering intelligence today. No confrontations." After the threatening text in the surveillance car, we'd changed our plans. Instead of trying to trap Vanessa, we would observe and gather information about her security and associates. "Mrs. Washington," a young usher hurried toward us. "Thank goodness you're here. Mrs. Taylor Washington has been asking for you." I exchanged glances with Carter. This wasn't part of the plan. "She has?" I asked. "Yes, she's in the green room and specifically requested you join her before the concert. She said it's about a surprise tribute to Marcus." Carter shook his head slightly, a warning. "I'd be happy to," I said, ignoring him. If Vanessa wanted to see me, this might be the opportunity we needed. "Mrs. Washington," Carter began, but I cut him off. "It's fine, Michael. This is what we came for." I patted his arm reassuringly, then followed the usher through the back corridors of the concert hall. The green room door was ajar. Inside, Vanessa stood alone, examining a display of Marcus's awards and photographs. She wore a stunning black gown, diamonds glittering at her throat, purchased, no doubt, with my son's money. "Evelyn," she said without turning, "I was beginning to think you wouldn't come." "I wouldn't miss my son's memorial," I replied, stepping into the room. She turned, smiling that perfect empty smile. "Of course not. After all, what kind of mother would miss her child's funeral?" "Oh, wait." I ignored the barb. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes." She gestured to the photographs. "I'm preparing a special announcement tonight, the establishment of the Marcus Washington Fellowship for Underprivileged Musicians." "How generous, isn't it?" She adjusted a frame. "$1 million endowment. The press will love it. The grieving widow honoring her husband's legacy. Is that what this is about? Press coverage?" Her eyes flashed. "Don't be naive, Evelyn. It's always about perception. Speaking of which," she moved closer, lowering her voice, "your recent activities have been creating the wrong kind of perception." My pulse quickened. "What activities would those be?" "Meeting with detectives, visiting banks, investigating my past." She smoothed her dress. "It needs to stop. Or what? Or things could get unpleasant. For you, for your daughters." She picked up a photograph of Marcus. "Such a shame about the apartment. Did you find new accommodations yet?" I took a deep breath. "Why did you kill my son, Vanessa?" Her hand froze on the frame. For a moment, I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. Then she laughed, a cold, brittle sound. "You really are persistent. I admired that about Marcus, too, until it became inconvenient. He found out about your past, didn't he? About Edward Reynolds and William Thomas?" Something dangerous flickered in her eyes. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "I think I do. Sandra Reynolds, Victoria Thomas, 3 dead husbands, 3 fortunes. Marcus was supposed to be number 4, but he was smarter than you expected." She set down the photograph carefully. "Even if that were true, you have no proof. The police certainly don't. Or I'd be having a very different conversation right now. We found his samples, the tea you poisoned him with." For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. "Impossible. I cleaned out everything." "Not everything," I bluffed. "He was always one step ahead of you." She recovered quickly. "It doesn't matter. Anything you think you found would be inadmissible without an autopsy. And my lawyers have made sure that will never happen. I stepped closer. Why, Vanessa? He loved you. Love, she scoffed. Love doesn't buy private islands or penthouse apartments. Was it worth it, taking his life? His life, she said coldly, was nothing special. A musician who played other people's music. I've created more value through my husband's fortunes than they ever would have alone. My hands trembled with rage, but I kept my voice steady. You won't get away with this. I already have. She checked her watch. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a memorial concert to host. Feel free to stay for the performance. After all, you're just a grieving mother seeking closure. Her smile returned, sharp as a blade. That's all anyone will ever see. As she brushed past me toward the door, she paused. Oh, and Evelyn? That recording device in your necklace? It's been jamming since you entered this room. A simple radio frequency blocker. You really should work with better equipment. The door closed behind her, leaving me alone with photographs of my dead son and the useless recorder around my neck. But for the first time since Marcus died, I felt a surge of hope, because Vanessa had made a critical mistake. She'd talked about the tea. She knew about the tea. I paced Carter's office, still in my concert dress. We'd left immediately after my conversation with Vanessa, not staying for the memorial performance. I never mentioned tea, only samples. She incriminated herself. Unfortunately, without the recording, it's still your word against hers, Carter said. And she's right about one thing. We need that autopsy. Tanya looked up from her laptop. I've been researching precedents for overturning religious objections to exhumation. There's a case in Maryland where the court ruled that suspected homicide outweighs religious considerations. Meanwhile, Michelle added, I've been following the money. Vanessa's moved over $3 million from Marcus's accounts to offshore holdings in the Caymans. Carter nodded thoughtfully. We need to accelerate this. Mrs. Washington, are you ready to go public with your suspicions? Absolutely, I said without hesitation. It'll get ugly, he warned. Her lawyers will paint you as a delusional, jealous mother. They'll drag your name through the mud. I don't care about my name. I care about justice for my son. 2 days later, we held a press conference on the steps of the courthouse. Michelle had arranged media coverage through her journalism contacts. I stood at the microphone, flanked by my daughters, Detective Carter and Dr. Lewis. My son, Marcus Washington, did not die of natural causes, I began, my voice steady despite the cameras and microphones pointed at my face. He was systematically poisoned by his wife, Vanessa Taylor Washington, who has a history of similar crimes under different names. I outlined our evidence, the hair samples, the falsified will, the offshore transfers, the previous husbands with similar deaths. As expected, Vanessa's legal team responded within hours, issuing statements calling me a grief-stricken mother unable to accept her son's tragic but natural death and threatening defamation lawsuits. What we didn't expect was the public response. Musicians who had worked with Marcus came forward with stories of his declining health and increasing paranoia in the months before his death. A former housekeeper for Vanessa and Marcus revealed finding unusual plant materials and powders in Vanessa's personal belongings. Most significantly, Edward Reynolds' daughter from his first marriage contacted us, having seen the press conference online. She had harbored similar suspicions about her father's death, but lacked the resources to investigate properly. We're gaining momentum, Tanya said a week later, spreading newspaper clippings across my kitchen table. The judge has agreed to review the exhumation order given the new testimonies. My phone rang. Rachel, Marcus's neighbor. Mrs. Washington? I just remembered something. The night he died, I saw Vanessa leaving the building around 8 p.m. with an overnight bag. She didn't return until nearly midnight. I remember because I was walking my dog and saw the ambulance arrive shortly after she came back. This matched Mr. Jenkins's account from the doorman station. Another piece of the puzzle. Thank you, Rachel. Would you be willing to make a statement to the police? Of course. Marcus was always so kind to me. He deserved better. After hanging up, I sat heavily at the kitchen table. The exhaustion of the past months was catching up with me. Mom, you need to rest, Michelle urged. I'll rest when she's behind bars, I replied. My doorbell rang. A courier stood outside with a thick envelope. Delivery for Evelyn Washington. Inside was a formal letter from the court. The judge had reversed her decision. The exhumation would proceed in 3 days. We did it, Tanya breathed. Not yet, Carter cautioned. Vanessa will fight this every step of the way, and now that she knows the exhumation is happening, she's dangerous. She has nothing to lose. What do you mean? I mean you need protection, he said grimly. All of you do. If the autopsy confirms poisoning, she's looking at murder 1. Some people would rather eliminate witnesses than face that kind of sentence. That night, alone in my bedroom despite Carter's warning to stay with family, I opened my jewelry box and removed Marcus's childhood photo. Behind it was a small key I'd found in the bank vault, a key I hadn't shown the others yet. The note with it simply read, "Storage Unit Number 247, Access Storage, Queens, for Mom, if needed." Tomorrow I would find out what else my clever son had hidden away. But tonight I clutched his photo and finally allowed myself to weep, not just for my loss, but for the justice now within reach. Outside, a car engine started. Through my curtains, I saw the same black sedan from before, following my every move. The final confrontation was coming, and only one of us would walk away. The storage facility smelled of dust and forgotten things. I followed the numbered units until I reached 247. Carter walking beside me, hand near his concealed weapon. We'd come at dawn to avoid being followed. The key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside, a single violin case sat on a metal shelf. A violin? Carter frowned. Marcus played cello. I opened the case. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a small digital recorder, a USB drive, and a sealed envelope with my name on it. He knew, I whispered. He knew she might kill him. We took everything to Carter's precinct, where tech specialists extracted the files. The recording was crystal clear. Marcus's voice, then Vanessa's, arguing about unexplained withdrawals from their joint accounts. "You're paranoid," her voice said. "It's the medication making you confused." "I'm not taking any medication," Marcus replied. "That's the point, Vanessa. What are you putting in my tea?" A pause, then, "Don't be ridiculous. If you're feeling unwell, we should see a doctor." "I already did. I had my blood tested last week." The silence that followed was damning. The USB drive contained even more. Financial records showing Vanessa had been siphoning money for months, research Marcus had compiled on her previous identities, and most crucially, a video he'd recorded 2 weeks before his death. On screen, my son looked exhausted, his normally vibrant face gaunt. If you're watching this, it means my suspicions were correct. Vanessa is not who she claims to be. I've discovered she's been married at least twice before, both husbands dying under circumstances similar to the symptoms I'm experiencing now. He detailed his evidence methodically, explaining how he'd begun to suspect Vanessa was poisoning him, how he'd collected samples and sought medical confirmation. "I've changed my will," he continued. "If anything happens to me, everything should go to my mother and sisters. I've filed it with attorney James Branson at Leibowitz and Branson. Vanessa doesn't know." He paused, emotion finally breaking through. "Mom, if you're watching this, I'm sorry I didn't listen. You saw through her from the beginning. I was blind." Tears streamed down my face as my son looked directly into the camera for his final words. "Don't let her get away with this. Don't let her do this to anyone else." The exhumation and autopsy confirmed everything. Marcus's body contained lethal levels of digitalis compound, concentrated in the heart tissue. The medical examiner placed the time of death several hours earlier than Vanessa had reported, consistent with the neighbor's testimony about her absence from the apartment. Armed with this evidence, the district attorney issued an arrest warrant. But when police arrived at Vanessa's apartment, she was gone. "She's running," Carter said, pacing my living room. "We've frozen the accounts we know about, but she likely has others we haven't traced." "What about my son's violin? His Stradivarius?" I asked. "Missing, along with several valuable paintings and jewelry. She's liquidating assets for her escape." For 3 agonizing days, there was no sign of her. Then Michelle burst into my apartment, waving her phone. "She's here, in New York. A contact at the auction house just called. The sale of Marcus's rare sheet music collection is still happening tomorrow. She sent instructions to proceed." Carter leaned forward. "She's desperate for cash if she's risking exposure for an auction." "It's more than that," I said, understanding suddenly. "It's arrogance. She doesn't believe she'll be caught. She still thinks she's smarter than everyone." We developed a plan. The auction would proceed as scheduled. Plainclothes officers would monitor all entrances. Michelle would attend as a buyer, Tanya as a legal representative for a music foundation, and I would remain hidden until the right moment. The next morning, Carter and I waited in a surveillance van outside the auction house. Through video feeds, we watched the elegant crowd gathering in the main hall. There, Carter pointed to a monitor, by the catalog table. A woman in a blonde wig and oversized sunglasses stood examining a listing of items. Despite the disguise, I recognized Vanessa's distinctive posture, the tilt of her head as she studied the document. "That's her," I confirmed. Carter radioed his team. "Target identified. Northeast corner, blonde wig, black pantsuit. Do not approach yet. Let her enter the main hall." I watched the monitors as Vanessa moved confidently through the crowd, nodding to acquaintances who failed to recognize her beneath the disguise. She took a seat near the back, perfect for observing the entire room while maintaining a clear path to the exit. The auctioneer began the proceedings. Marcus's annotated scores from Juilliard sold for thousands. Original compositions fetched even more. Throughout it all, Vanessa sat motionless, watching. Then the auctioneer announced, "Our final item today, ladies and gentlemen, is truly special. The personal journal of Marcus Washington containing his reflections on music, life, and truth." Vanessa sat up straight, confusion evident even beneath her sunglasses. This item wasn't on the catalog. Opening bid starts at $10,000. The bidding war was fierce and fast. When it reached $50,000, only 2 bidders remained, Michelle and a man in the front row. "Sold," the auctioneer declared eventually, for $75,000 to bidder number 42. As the crowd applauded, the auctioneer added, "And now, to present this extraordinary item, we have a special guest, Marcus Washington's mother, Evelyn Washington." I stepped onto the stage from the wings, watching Vanessa freeze in her seat. "Thank you," I said into the microphone. "My son's journal contains his most private thoughts, including his discovery that his wife was slowly poisoning him to death." Gasps rippled through the audience. Vanessa stood abruptly. "Security is now closing all exits," I continued calmly. "Vanessa Taylor Washington, also known as Sandra Reynolds and Victoria Thomas, is wanted for the murder of my son and 2 previous husbands." Chaos erupted as Vanessa bolted for a side door, only to find it blocked by officers. She turned, searching desperately for another escape route, her wig slipping to reveal her dark hair beneath. Our eyes met across the room, hers wild with panic, mine steady with the justice I'd promised my son. "It's over," I said, though she couldn't hear me through the commotion. "It's finally over." The courtroom fell silent as I took the witness stand. After 18 months of investigation, arrests, and pretrial motions, Vanessa Taylor Washington was finally facing justice. She sat at the defense table, immaculately dressed in a conservative navy suit, her expression serene, a mask carefully constructed for the jury. "Mrs. Washington," the prosecutor began, "could you describe your relationship with the defendant prior to your son's death?" I looked directly at Vanessa as I answered. From the moment I met her, I sensed something wasn't right. The way she looked at my son's possessions, the way she gradually isolated him from family, little things that added up to a pattern. "Objection," Vanessa's attorney called. "Speculation." "Sustained," the judge ruled. "The witness will stick to observable facts." Throughout the morning, I detailed Marcus's declining health, the changed funeral arrangements, my exclusion from the service, and our subsequent investigation. When the defense attorney cross-examined me, his strategy became clear. "Mrs. Washington, isn't it true that you disapproved of your son's marriage from the beginning?" "I had concerns," I acknowledged. "Concerns based on what? A mother's intuition?" His tone made the words sound ridiculous. "Based on 30 years of nursing experience and a lifetime of protecting my children. Yet you have no medical training in toxicology, correct? No forensic expertise? I don't need a degree to recognize when my son is being manipulated and isolated." He smiled condescendingly. No further questions. The trial continued for weeks. Expert witnesses confirmed the digitalis poisoning. Financial investigators traced Vanessa's elaborate money movements. Former colleagues of her previous husbands testified to similar patterns of declining health before their deaths. Most damaging was Marcus's video testimony, his face on the courtroom screens, speaking from beyond the grave to name his killer. On the final day of testimony, Vanessa surprised everyone by choosing to take the stand. Her attorney had advised against it, but she insisted. Marcus was the love of my life, she said, dabbing at non-existent tears. These accusations have been devastating. His mother never accepted me, never gave me a chance. And the evidence of poisoning? The prosecutor asked during cross-examination. Marcus was experimenting with herbal supplements, she claimed. I warned him they might be dangerous, but he was convinced they would enhance his playing. And your previous husbands? They also died from self-administered herbal supplements? I can't explain those tragic coincidences, she said, voice breaking perfectly. I've been widowed 3 times. Haven't I suffered enough? During closing arguments, her attorney painted me as a vengeful mother, unable to release her grip on her successful son, manufacturing evidence out of grief and jealousy. The prosecutor simply played Marcus's video again, letting his words fill the courtroom. Don't let her get away with this. Don't let her do this to anyone else. After 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned. As the foreman stood, Vanessa reached for her attorney's hand, the first genuine gesture of fear I'd seen from her. On the count of first-degree murder, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed for the doors to break the news. My daughters embraced me, tears flowing freely. Vanessa sat motionless, her mask finally cracking to reveal the rage beneath. As officers approached to take her into custody, she turned to look at me one last time. He would have left you eventually, she hissed as they led her past our table. They always choose me in the end. I stood, facing her directly. My son chose the truth. Even knowing it might cost his life, he chose the truth. That's why you lost, Vanessa. Not because of me, but because you underestimated him. Her eyes widened slightly, the realization that it was Marcus himself, not me, who had engineered her downfall. For all her calculation, she had never truly known the man she married, his integrity, his courage, his love for his family. As they led her away, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. Outside the courthouse, reporters thrust microphones toward me. Mrs. Washington, how do you feel about the verdict? I thought carefully before answering. They tried to bury my son without me being there, so I showed up with the police and the real truth. The statement went viral within hours, becoming a rallying cry for those seeking justice against powerful opponents. That night, alone in my apartment, the one I'd been allowed to keep after Marcus's true will was authenticated. I opened a bottle of champagne he'd given me years ago, saving it for a special occasion. We did it, baby, I whispered to his photograph. We got her. For the first time since his death, I slept without nightmares. 3 years after Marcus's death, I stood on the stage of the renovated Harlem Community Center, addressing the crowd gathered for its grand reopening. Today, we celebrate not just a building, but a legacy, I said, looking out at the faces, neighbors, friends, musicians, and students from the newly established Marcus Washington Music Academy. When my son was taken from us, we could have surrendered to grief. Instead, we chose to build something that would keep his spirit alive. The journey from courtroom to this moment had been long. After Vanessa's conviction and subsequent life sentence without parole, the legal battles continued over Marcus's estate. With his authentic will finally honored, my daughters and I received his considerable assets, including substantial insurance policies that Vanessa had been unable to claim. Marcus never sought recognition for his generosity, I continued. Many of you didn't know that he anonymously funded music programs in Harlem schools, or that he gave private lessons to promising students who couldn't afford them. Today, we bring that generosity into the light. The community center's music wing now housed state-of-the-art practice rooms, recording facilities, and a small performance hall. 20 students had already received full scholarships through the foundation we established in Marcus's name. His Stradivarius, recovered after Vanessa's arrest, was displayed in a special case in the main hall. Each year, it would be loaned to a talented student from the community for their Carnegie Hall debut, continuing the journey Marcus had begun decades earlier. After the ceremony, as people mingled and young musicians performed in small groups throughout the building, Michelle approached with a young woman in tow. "Mom, this is Jasmine. She's our first scholarship recipient to be accepted to Juilliard." The girl, barely 18, clutched her violin case nervously. "Mrs. Washington, I just wanted to thank you. Without the scholarship, I couldn't have afforded the application fee, let alone tuition. Play something for me," I said gently. She removed her violin with practiced care, positioned it under her chin, and began to play. The melody was one of Marcus's compositions, a piece he'd written after his first Carnegie Hall performance. As the notes filled the hallway, people stopped to listen. The raw emotion in her playing brought tears to my eyes. When she finished, the hallway erupted in applause. "Marcus would have loved you," I told her, embracing her. "This is exactly what he wanted his music to do, inspire the next generation." Later that evening, as the event wound down, I found myself alone in the performance hall. I sat in the front row, gazing at the empty stage where a single spotlight illuminated Marcus's cello chair, left vacant in his honor. Tanya found me there, sliding into the seat beside me. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "Just thinking about how far we've come," I said. 3 years ago, I was fighting just to attend my son's funeral. Now we're continuing his work in ways even he might not have imagined. You never gave up, Mom. Not when the lawyers threatened you, not when the press called you delusional, not when Vanessa's supporters accused you of destroying your son's happy marriage. I smiled, thinking of the difficult months after Marcus's death, the legal battles, the public scrutiny, the nights spent poring over evidence with Detective Carter. I couldn't give up, not with Marcus counting on me. "The students idolize you, you know," Tanya said. "Michelle overheard them calling you Mama Justice behind your back." I laughed. "I'm just a mother who loved her son." "You're more than that now," she insisted. "You've shown them that one determined person can take on money, influence, and corruption, and win." As we walked out into the Harlem night, neighbors called out greetings. Children ran up to show me their program booklets from the ceremony. Parents thanked me for giving their kids opportunities they'd never dreamed possible. Back home, I placed a fresh flower beside Marcus's photograph. The house no longer felt empty. It was filled with purpose and the ongoing work of preserving his legacy. In my jewelry box, I still kept the key to storage unit number 247, now empty of its evidence but symbolizing the moment everything changed. Next to it lay newspaper clippings from the trial and a small USB drive containing Marcus's final message. I rarely watched it anymore. I didn't need to. I'd fulfilled my promise to him. Vanessa would never harm anyone again. His true legacy would continue through the foundation and the young musicians finding their voices through his generosity. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from Michelle. "Jasmine's audition video is going viral online. Over 100,000 views already. Marcus would be so proud." I smiled, picturing my son's face the first time he performed at Carnegie Hall. The pure joy of music shared with an appreciative audience. "They tried to bury you," I whispered to his memory, "but instead, they planted a seed. And what a beautiful garden had grown from that seed. Music flowing through the streets of Harlem once again. Young talents discovering their gifts. A community healing through art and opportunity. Some people called it justice. Others called it a miracle. I simply called it a mother's love, the kind that doesn't end at the grave." Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and share your story in the comments. Your journey might inspire another queen.